Hi everybody. Bit of an unusual one today. I received something interesting in the post a couple of days ago now, and it's been suggested to me by a small person by the name of Poppy, who's a big fan of Disney Egg, my daughter. And her suggestion was that I should do an unboxing video because she's a big fan of those. So I'm going to open this up. I know what's in it. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to say a little bit about it, and there's little cards that came with it as well that I'm going to read out. So, there's a box within a box. Inside that box, there is, if I can get it out, there is another box. Look at a little velvet box. Inside that little box, there is a gold coin. And, oh, it's in a little plastic bag. I need to use my teeth for this. So, this was sent to me by our good friend Ryan Holiday of the Daily Stoic. And I don't know if you guys can see that there. Hold up. What's the camera? There you go. That says Memento Mori, remember thou must die, which is an odd thing in a way to get in the post from Ryan Holiday, but I very much appreciate it because he knows it's the kind of cool thing that I'm kind of into, because of my interest in Stoicism. And I do like things with skulls on them, actually. Maybe I'm a secret goth or something. And on the back, I'll show you the other side of it. There's a wreath. If you can read that, it says, "You could leave life right now," which is a kind of little Memento Mori saying. And I thought I could probably say a little bit about this. It's an aspect of Stoicism that particularly interests me. And before I do that, I'll put it back in its little case just now. So thank you very much for sending that to me, Ryan. And on the card here, it says, Memento Mori, remember you will die, is the ancient tradition of reflection on mortality. Used properly, Memento Mori is invigorating, a tool to create priority and urgency, to treat our time as a gift and not waste it on the trivial and vain. So really the point of it is to reconcile us to death, but also to make us to enjoy life more, and appreciate life more. That's a better way of putting it. The enclosed coin was created to remind us to do just that. The front features an interpretation of the French painter Philippe de Champaigne, 17th century painting, Still Life with a Skull. There you go. I think it's a tulip that's on it, or is it a rose or something? And an hourglass. And the back shows a shortened line from Marcus Aurelius's timeless The Meditations. This coin is designed with the intention of carrying it in your pocket, a literal and inescapable reminder that we can leave life at any moment, a thought which should determine what you will do and say and think. Each is handcrafted in the United States by Wendell's, a custom mint operating in Minnesota since 1882. To learn more, visit dailystoic.com. So there you go. And Mickey's very interested in this. Right? She's keeping me company as always in the background. So Memento Mori is something I'm very interested in. It's a whole tradition in art. The Victorians were really into this kind of thing, and like funeral art. Highgate Cemetery in London is one of my favourite places to visit, and the gravestones there are full of imagery that I think is intended not so much for the dead, but for the living to view and to remind us to appreciate our lives more fully. And traditionally, it was said that philosophers would keep a skull on their desk to remind them of their mortality in this way. Philosophers of different traditions. Some scholars believe that the famous iconic scene in Hamlet, where Hamlet is holding the skull of the court jester, Yorick, who's his childhood friend, is intended to be recognisable to Elizabethan audiences as something that a philosopher would do, in that Hamlet had recently returned from his studies And the implication was that he'd been studying theology and philosophy and stuff, and him holding the skull up is maybe something that the audience would connect with that, although it's kind of maybe now lost in a modern audience. It doesn't have the same connotation because we don't have skulls on our discs anymore, but maybe we should. Maybe we will now with this coin. And the Epictetus refers to this tradition that Roman generals and emperors riding through the streets of Rome in a chariot in triumph with, I think, captured slaves behind them, but also wagons carrying treasure that they captured and stuff. They had two slaves riding behind them, holding wreaths above their heads and whispering Memento Mori and stuff like that. Other things we're told they said along the same lines as well, to remind them that despite all this kind of ticker tape parade that was going on around them, they weren't to become too carried away with their own ego, grandiosity. And I read recently that actually the slaves that stood behind them were, I think, actually, here's a little tidbit for you, gladiators. Which is something I didn't realise until recently. So I feel like a Roman emperor riding around in triumph now with this in my pocket to remind me that I am going to die. I find this a very useful meditation, actually, and it's something that I found very personally valuable over the years. I've talked to Ryan a little bit about, to what extent is there an element of vanity in thinking that we've overcome our fear of death? Because obviously if somebody walked in right now and put a gun to my head or something like that, I don't know, I'd probably be terrified for all I know. But what I do know is that as a young man and a teenager, I had quite bad death anxiety. I used to lie awake at night kind of worrying about existential anxiety and what it all means, and I used to read a lot of different religious texts and stuff. I was very interested in Christianity as well as a teenager, and I was very anxious about my own mortality. And it took me a long time to overcome that. And partly it was just part of the aging process, I think, but also it was a deliberate thing that I forced myself to think about my mortality. Because I realised that Buddhists did that, and later I came to realise that the Stoics had this practice as well. And there is undoubtedly a kind of habituation effect. If we think about these things long enough, then our anxiety wears off and we become more indifferent, at least to the idea of it, which I think in itself is useful. I think that has been something that's kind of changed the way I feel inside over the years, and I think it's changed my behaviour in certain situations as well. Like I say, it was something that kind of weighed heavily in my mind, and it doesn't really anymore. One of my favourite quotes is from Seneca regarding this, and he says, "To learn how to die is to unlearn how to be a slave," which I love because it's so dramatic. We live in an age of sound bites where people say quite banal things, but that's really a slightly challenging and disturbing thing to say. And it resonates with me because of my own experience of Memento Mori and coming to terms with my own death anxiety, existential anxiety, and so on. So this is something that I find it interesting to meditate on. I noticed recently also that Marcus Aurelius, when he's describing an exercise which we could also call ubi sunt, which is the trope in Latin poetry, where they say, "Where is he now? Where are they now, these great generals and philosophers of the past?" This is a recurring theme in a lot of poetry and literature, and it recurs a lot in Marcus as well. Alexander the Great, Pompey, Caesar, where are they now? Like in the poem Ozymandias, for example, is a very good example of this. There's a passage where Marcus actually appears to say that he rehearses doing this by looking at his own image. Now that could be a statue, a painting. I guess he saw a lot of those. We're told that Rome was full of depictions of the emperor that were owned by ordinary people who adored him. And certainly no shortage of those. But it may also have been that he was looking at his reflection in a mirror. And that's quite possible. So I find that interesting that this guy would look at his own reflection in a mirror or look at a painting or a statue of himself, and he would think about all the emperors that had preceded him, his adoptive father Augustus, Hadrian, all the way back to Augustus, the first emperor, and that they were all gone now, and the people, their cohort, the philosophers and advisors, the generals were all dead now as well. And thinking about how many of these great men had came and gone before him, and then looking at his own image, Marcus used as a way of coming to terms with his own mortality. And so I still find this a useful practice to engage in. Why? Because I think it can kind of deflate our ego, and it makes us perhaps less attached to material possessions as well, and less disturbed by other people's opinions of us, and kind of the trivia of everyday life that we should probably be less concerned about. I think it has the potential to make us more concerned about the quality that we introduce to our own lives through virtue, through doing things that we can be proud of. And I guess that reminds me of another thing about this, because I know that some people, when they see these kind of trinkets and things, they're like, well, Stoics aren't materialistic, so why would they pay $20 or whatever, which incidentally is the price of 3 pints of craft beer, for goodness sakes. It's probably like 2 coffees at Starbucks or something like that. So, people sometimes say, well, we're not supposed to be materialistic. Why would we have jewelry and things like that? It seems incongruous with Stoicism in some ways. Although the Stoics apparently did have jewelry that served the same purpose. The British Museum have a gem from the Roman imperial period, which depicts Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. So it seems that at least some Stoics did wear jewelry that depicted their Stoic role models. And I guess you could view this as a sort of the opposite of a materialistic thing, because although it is an object and it's something that you have to possess and you could lose it, I mean, the whole point of it is that it's to remind us not to be attached to material things. So it serves a kind of paradoxical purpose, I think, and it doesn't have to be something that's paid for and bought. It could equally well be something that you have that reminds you to think that way, that costs you nothing. When I'm practicing the view from above, which is a similar kind of related meditation technique, everyone has their own quirky little ways of doing these things. Sometimes I'll just get a piece of paper and I'll draw a circle on it, and then I'll just make a little dot in the middle of it, and I'll just look at that for a minute, and I'll imagine that the circle represents the vastness of the universe, or it represents infinity or something, and the little dot I imagine being the kind of minuscule point in time and space that my life occupies. So I could do that on a scrap of paper. It doesn't have to be a piece of jewelry or something, but I think that these things can potentially serve a purpose. And I know a lot of people in the Stoic community, as we've come to refer to it these days, have tattoos. I met a guy in my local bar who was serving craft beer, funnily enough, and had a Marcus Aurelius quote tattooed on his forearm. And, there are many other people with Stoic tattoos and who have Roman coins with Marcus Aurelius' image on them that they carry around or have made into rings and things like that. Not because they want Stoic bling, but to show off or something like that. But they're for their own personal use, as a kind of, not as a fashion statement, but as a personal reminder to think about Stoic principles. And some people have even said that owning books about Stoicism and having them on their shelf serves that purpose as well. Even when they're not reading it, they may look at the book and it reminds them of their Stoic principles, and it reminds them of some of the techniques and ideas that they feel are beneficial in Stoicism. So that's the way that I look at these things. So I just wanted to kind of ramble for a couple of minutes about this little trinket that I got in the post, because I do kind of like these little things. And I'll be introducing him to another present that I got from one of my friends. So have a little final look at Yorick there, or whatever we're going to call him. And actually, I might as well introduce you to his buddy here who's on the desk, who I've just realised while I'm speaking, somebody gave me this years and years ago. One of my good friends brought this back from a holiday in Greece and gave it to me as a present. So that's our buddy Socrates. He keeps me company when I'm sitting at my computer desk. So thank you very much, Ryan, for sending that to me in the post. And whether other people choose to get one of these particular coins, or whether they choose to scribble a little reminder on a post-it note or something, either way, I think the main thing is that we use these cues and reminders in our Stoic practice, as the ancient Stoics presumably did as well, in order to remind us of virtue and what it is that we're trying to achieve by studying the Stoic texts. So I think that's all that I wanted to say about that for today, and I'll be looking at this later and thinking intensely about my own mortality. So it's goodbye from me in Nova Scotia once again, and is it goodbye from you, Mickey Dog? Yeah? I think we've got a little twitch of the ears or something like that there. Okay, bye everybody.